Back at it, my peoples. WTF. Who the fuck? And today, we ask the question, who the fuck was Chuck Bednarik, Concrete Charlie? When football fans talk about toughness, one name still towers above almost everyone else, Chuck Bednarik. Known as Concrete Charlie, Bednarik wasn't just one of the toughest players in the Eagles' history. He was one of the toughest players in NFL history. Before he ever wore Eagles green, Bednarik served his country as a World War II tail gunner, flying dangerous combat missions over Europe. After returning home, he worked his way through life with the same grit that would later define his football career. In 1949, the Philadelphia Eagles selected Bednarik with the first overall pick in the NFL draft. And what followed was one of the greatest careers football has ever seen. At 6'3", 230, Bednarik was a giant of his era. But what made him special wasn't just his size, it was his endurance. He played center on offense, linebacker on defense, often staying on the field for nearly every snap. That's why many historians call him the last true 60-minute man in professional football. His strengths were legendary. He possessed incredible football intelligence, diagnosing plays before they developed. He was a devastating tackler, a fearless leader, and perhaps the most durable player of his generation. Teammates knew they could depend on him, and opponents knew they went for a long afternoon. But even legends had weaknesses. Bednarik wasn't the fastest player in the field. By modern NFL standards, he wouldn't even be considered an elite athlete in open space. He relied on instincts, positioning, toughness, and determination rather than pure speed. Yet somehow, that made him even more dangerous. Of course, no discussion of Chuck Bednarik is complete without mentioning one of the most famous plays in NFL history. On the 20th of November, 1960, Chuck delivered a crushing tackle to the Giants star, Frank Gifford. The hit became known as the hit heard across the world. And that remains part of NFL lore more than 6 decades later. But his most important play came later, that same season. In the championship game of 1960, Chuck made the game-saving tackle on Green Bay Packers fullback Jim Taylor as time expired. Then he famously remained on top of Taylor while the final seconds ticked away, securing Philly's championship and handing legendary coach Vince Lombardi the only playoff loss of his career. Now think about that for a second. Chuck helped give Vince his only postseason defeat. Players and coaches across generations respected him. Opponents feared him. Fans adored him. In 1967, Bednarik was inducted to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, cementing his place among football's immortals. But perhaps his greatest legacy is what he represented: a steel worker, a soldier, a championship. An old-school football player who never backed down from a challenge. Chuck Bednarik just wasn't a Hall of Famer. He was the embodiment of toughness itself. And that's why all these years later, Concrete Charlie still remains one of the greatest Eagles and one of the greatest football players the game has ever seen.